welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And we are straight from the cinema and returning from Silent Hill.
Yes.
So, this one had a lot of... we had quite a bit of conversation before we got into this one. Now, this one has kind of been ripped apart online. Not very good. I think it's like 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a few days ago it was 6 and seemed like it was staying around about 6%. And generally the thought looking at it was, I mean, how can it be so bad? You know, I mean, like when you think about the idea of taking basically a beloved video game and being like, from the look of the trailer, which I originally remember thinking, this literally kind of looks like an uncanny valley kind of just remake shot for shot of basically of what would be Silent Hill 2. Yeah. So it looks like they've just done that, except the only thing is, you know, some of the shots look a little bit too CGI heavy on backgrounds and things like that. They just look like it might be made cheaply. So that was already a concern. So I was already a bit like, I'm not so sure that, you know, even from the trailer I was thinking, I'm not so sure that this is going to be that great. But I was like, I don't quite see how you can maybe take something that's like a story that's made for you, and if you're going to make it shot for shot, which is already a questionable choice, I think, but it's what many fans out there, that's what they ask for with video games quite often. You see it online where they're like, why don't they just make that? It's such a good story. Yeah, so this might give us an idea of why we don't exactly translate things exactly from video game screen, but this one doesn't do that either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive Silent Hill fan. Grew up playing Silent Hill. Loved Silent Hill 2. Seminal game. I finished the remake maybe like 2-3 weeks ago. I'm playing through Silent Hill F as we speak, and I went into this thinking I don't expect it to be great, but you know, I'm going to go along with the ride. I don't think it's going to be quite as abysmal as it's being made out to be. And we are keeping this spoiler-free for now. We've got to drop our full spoiler-free filled thoughts on Monday. But this was rough, man.
I mean, spoiler-free, it's tricky. It's tricky and spoiler-free, so it won't be hanging around too long with this kind of part. But, I mean, so you've got your side of it, and I've got mine where I am basically, I think I played the original Silent Hill when I was younger. I don't greatly remember a lot of it, and I had never watched a Silent Hill film until about 2 days ago, because I'd avoided it, because I always thought it looked pretty, I always thought the films looked shit.
Yeah.
I always thought the films looked pretty shit. What I didn't know was that the, Silent Hill film was made by Christopher Gans, who's only made a couple of films, to be fair. He's only made basically 2 Silent Hill films, and he made one film that I love, which I actually mentioned in previous episodes, which was kind of like a forgotten gem kind of thing, which is called Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is an excellent film. So I was like, okay, he made that. So I was like, that actually made me go, actually, all right, I'll give Silent Hill a go. As we're going to do Return to Silent Hill, I should at least have some context of his style as he's returning to do Return to Silent Hill. And I was pleasantly surprised with the original film. I said there's nothing that is, fantastic in terms of, character, and, there's nothing that's amazing in terms of acting and stuff, and there's a lot of cheese and there's a lot of hamminess. Not as much as I think from, say, like Resident Evil films and stuff like that. But I thought, in terms of the actual atmospheric, the suspense, the tone, and even the use of some of the characters, from what I knew of them, I thought generally as a horror film, it was pretty good. It's got some pretty graphic nature, some really quite graphic scenes in the original film. So I was like, this is actually pretty good, And one thing we did look at before this was that film was actually made at the time for a fair, probably helped by things like the success of 2000s of something like Resident Evil, where his original one got about 50 million budget, which if you inflate it now is a much bigger, probably about more like 80 million that you can inflate it to at this point. So the original film had quite a good budget, and this one only had around a 26 million budget. And one thing we can say straight away is that shows.
Yeah, it shows kind of through all of it, I think. through just the kind of lack of really any characters throughout the film.
Yeah. I mean, we've got one actress who is, I don't know that plays within the story of the film, but she's playing pretty much all the roles that aren't, apart from, is it, Eddie in the toilets and Laura, is it?
Laura.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting. So the actress who plays Mary Ann Maria is the same one who voices her and models her in the remake.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Ivy Templeton, who plays Laura in the remake.
Yeah.
And Blooper Team gave her an NDA, so she couldn't disclose that she was cast as Laura in the Silent Hill 2 remake when she got cast as Laura in this. Christopher Gans wasn't aware, so it just kind of worked out that that's how it was.
Yeah.
But I just feel like they used a lot of what do they call them? Like digital sets.
Yeah, green screen background.
It had that very low budget, like slightly bluish tint to everything, which is never a good sign.
It's one of I will say that that for one thing for it to kind of be somewhat at times positive is there is still some flair of what I think Christopher Gans actually had with the original film, which is some of the things that made it a little bit better. So when we've got it, the worst parts, to be honest, for me, and these are always the worst parts, is it's always obvious when you've got two actors stood in front of it, when there's going to be a background set, when there's scenes when when you've got the characters, is it James?
Yeah, James.
Yeah,
Big James.
James and Mary are stood in front of what is meant to be Silent Hill behind them, and I'm not gonna lie, when we see a shot of Silent Hill, it looks like it's video game quality, and probably not even like PS5 video game quality. A little bit back from
PS2,
there, PS3 maybe.
Yeah,
I'll be kinder. It looks like that kind of shot. So when you've got them stood in front of a background like that, now there's not all of them, because when there's actually parts when it looks like they've used actual practical sets, they do look good. They do look like quite well made. They look quite nice. When he's on the practical parts of the streets that he's walking down, it looks good. The second we pan out and we get a mix of maybe a practical little part of a set and then the CGI part, it looks not so good. That's the problem. It's a one that you can already look at, and part of that is that you look at it and go, when I watch the original film and there are CGI things that I'm like, oh, well, some of it looks really good. Some of it, you can already see the aging on it. It doesn't quite look great. But I was like, well, that was made in 2006. This is like a film that was one of those 2000s films.
Yeah.
This feels like a video game from back then. Like, it's a director who doesn't quite know how to make a video game adaptation now. Like, that was a video game adaptation that was fine in the early 2000s, because that's just what they were all made like, and they were making money, so the studios were like, just copy Resident Evil. Just made that. And at the time he did something that was actually like, oh, well, I actually want it to be a little bit more hardcore and a little bit more, and I want to have some of my own visual flair. So that was like good back then for him, that he it was a little bit more, and the original's been looked at more kindly in recent years, actually. But sadly, we've got a director that's then come here and almost gone more into the things that you didn't want to see from the original, and he's leaned into it. He's leaned into the original. At least was a mixture of the first game blended with an original story to make kind of an amalgamation, and at least that led to something that kind of felt like there was a consistent storyline. Now, what we've got here with this film is something that's much more like a bunch of scenes that are stolen from the game and not a consistent, because what I'll say about it is that I was confused as fuck, because my daughter's 3 weeks old, so my second daughter, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty the last couple of days I'm pretty tired for it, so I was maybe not. We've gone for quite a late showing, because that's all we could really get to make this work. So I was maybe a little bit out of it in parts, and there were parts when I was like, I don't know if I just don't know what was happening, or if I was in a sleep deprived state. So although you might say I'm not the best one to review that, at the same time, from looking back at the plot on Wikipedia, for the most part, I was there. I still don't know. But the film made me feel like there were it even has to have a photosensitivity part at the start of it, and I get that why, because I was looking at one point when it was just flashing at me, and I was like, my brain was just like fucking going on high alert. What's going on? Where am I right now?
There was just, speaking about the plot being from Wikipedia, it did feel as if like Christopher Gans had just got an AI summary of the plot of Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
So when we look at Silent Hill, there's kind of two different ways in which the storylines go. You have the kind of original Silent Hill 3 and 4 and Homecoming, which is this thing about the cult and this group called the Order, and they're trying to kind of contact or bring back some god, and that's very much in the first Silent Hill film. And I've never been massively into that. I never really enjoyed that. However, with Silent Hill 2 and some of the other games, you get this much more kind of personal horror. A lot more about the characters and about the kind of emotions and this kind of manifestation of them.
Yeah.
But the problem with this plot is, at some points, he tries to kind of cram in this cult stuff, which never was part of Silent Hill 2. And it also, I will talk about this more in the spoiler-filled one, because I can't without going into them. But it removes the whole point of Silent Hill 2, and the whole character arcs, the whole horror is based upon it being personal and not to do with this cult.
Yeah.
There was a point in it where it opens up and I was thinking, this is okay, it's not as bad as it's going to be. And then James reaches Silent Hill and he sees Angela in the graveyard, which happens in the games. And there's a bit where they say about the ash.
Yeah.
And I thought, the sneaky fucking bastards. That's not in it. You've gone off. And just through that, I knew that they were going to underpin what Silent Hill 2 is. And the whole point of Silent Hill. And the whole thing about the fog. Yeah. I have to be very vague about it.
You can explain it in more detail.
I will.
In the spoiler free.
It really got to me from there. I was like, I think you're already like 10 minutes in. You're already undoing something.
So, for the spoiler-free section of this, so if you listen to this and you're a fan of the game, you're already saying that you're probably going to be annoyed by this.
Probably, because it's such like a seminal game, and it takes so many, like everything in that game, apart from I think the bugs, the little Scotland bugs that run around.
Yeah.
Everything relates to James, and everything has a meaning behind it. Why all the enemies are like that? Why everything is so personal to him?
Yeah.
And nobody else can see them. So Eddie can't see James's manifestations. James can't really see Angela's. Nobody can see anybody else's.
Yeah.
Because they're in their own kind of personal hells that they have to deal with. But in this, it's just like, nah. Don't worry about that.
Yeah,
don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And then it feels like a lot of the creature design that just felt a lot lacking. There was kind of this. It was just a bit of an empty film. Akira Yamaoka.
When it does have some creatures in it, I think they were okay, like in terms of like some of them were taken straight. Obviously, the ones that were obviously you got Pyramid Head, you got the nurses.
Yeah.
There are a few of them. Basically, they are the ones that were mainly in the original film that he used, and it feels like he just brought back the same ones that he used in the first, But the ones these were all in the original film that he made. I meant for Chris to focus on the movie side of like what he's done previously, and he kind of brought all of those back. The ones that he had obviously in the original he'd stolen from a mixture, he'd stolen from. So he just he's using those same ones. I think most of those ones look pretty like good though in design.
Yeah.
I think the way that he's designed some of them, like the nurses and things like this, actually look fairly good. So there are some creepier creature designs. It's just the fact that there's a real lack of it. There's a real lack of this in this one, where there's a real sense of death, or for the general moviegoer, talking from more my side of being more of the general moviegoer with this one, I think that there is a general where I think some of the creature design taken straight from Silent Hill, from the game, but still there are some good uses of those designs. It's one of the bits I think is a little bit more positive, is that actually I didn't think that some of those designs looked horribly CGI'd actually. Some of them actually looked better than others. Some of them looked like they were actually like quite practical and better than some of the outside visuals. It was more, for me, it was more the backgrounds and stuff that were the real niggling, like they just look weird kind of thing, than it was necessarily all of the creatures and stuff. Even like the little bugs that you talked about, actually the little designs on the bugs and stuff actually look cool.
In the original Silent Hill, I remember that. In the original Silent Hill, they had this weird little face on them. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah. I mean, there was a weird little face on these ones too. They did show them in the when it's going up. There's a scene when it goes, they like go up a door. Yeah. And you see their little face for like a minute. But the one thing I just thought was that actually, like it kind of looked good though. I don't know if it was fully CGI, the little creature part of that. I know the moving around was, but the actual looking at them, whether that was practical. But I thought that was one of the things I thought was positive. But the problem is that some of it's creepy, but it feels very spaced out. You know, it feels like it takes more than half of the film to get to some of these really cool creatures, and then you get them like in a few scenes scattered, and they're all very fast. It doesn't last very long at all with any of them. And there's also one thing that comes out of my mind with actually one of the things that actually made me want to watch the original Silent Hill was seeing a clip where Pyramid Head basically tears the skin off of someone, and that was that was an awesome like. Okay, so there's actually some real mega kind of body horror in the original kind of film that he made, which is not here. We've got a few moments of body horror and things like that. There just aren't. And I'm not saying that's necessarily Silent Hill 2, where it's not death. It is about the suspense, it's about the tension around it. But it is another one of those things you've got to be mindful of when you're making it for this kind of adapting it to the screen, is that people want to see something that's going to come of these creatures being around and stuff. They want to see something that's going to come out of it, and it's that's just one thing. Sometimes they're just there and not much that comes out of it, kind of thing. And it is just that kind of that reaction. And then the other thing, just for me generally, of the video adaptation part is, amount of people that say they want to have that person walking through hallways and walking down roads, and they want to follow them and stuff like that, and that's just what they want to see in like this game or a Resident Evil game or things like that. They just want to see people like, I just want to see them suspensefully walking through a hallway, through a door, through things, because that's what I do in the game. But that's not, when you're the one in control and you're looking for items and you're looking around a room and stuff like that, when you're immersed into a game, when you're in control of what's going on around you, and then you get drawn in by the noises and going towards them and stuff like that, that's what makes the game good. In a film, that only works in like a very short period of time. Doing that, it works for like sections and stuff like that. I did, again, like the original one, I thought they had some good balance of that, where you had the character walking through for some periods of time, but then like quickly finding like an item and then moving on to something else, and it didn't spend too long on it. Here, it feels like we spend a very long time with James just walking and walking around and walking and seeing something else, and there's another person, and there they're gone, and in a way, that's kind of what you do in a game. The difference is, though, along that you've collected items, you've read things, you've heard things, you've heard suspenseful noises, you've been drawn in because you're aiming for a task, you're aiming for something. It's not as interesting when you're the one just sat like, okay, so
I'm just watching
when something happens.
But it's going back to that point. They include a lot of the locations from the game. We get Rosewater Park, we get the hospital, we get the apartment blocks. Luckily, we don't get the prison. It's dog shit. Nobody wants to go there. We get the Lakeview Hotel. We get a lot of these places, but we don't seem to spend a lot of time in them. No. And we get a lot of the we get some of the characters. Like we get introduced to Eddie, we get introduced to Angela, we see Laura, we see Maria. But we don't, and each of them have their own kind of stories and links to it in the game. But in this, they don't seem to flesh that out. It's almost like they're like, well, we need to include stuff about James and Mary's life before, and we need to include this weird cult. But then that doesn't really like go anywhere. No. So it just feels like narratively, it feels so kind of. Like if the game has this weird kind of Lynchian kind of aspect to it, where surreal things happen, but it's kind of supposed to be a little surreal. The characters don't always fully react to it. You're kind of not sure how to take it. But this doesn't have that. This just has kind of like a half-assed, like, we don't really know where we're going with it. It doesn't have any.
So it happens. They do react to it. They run off. They get as far. They get somewhere else.
We have a flashback.
Yeah, and then that's. I mean, and that's like, again, to kind of, so we can kind of, we're like, the spoiler-filled one is more the one where we can talk about specifically those kind of parts that have happened. With this, for me, like, as a general, there was a part of me originally when I was watching this film going, you know what? Yeah, I know there are visual flaws, but I'm gonna give a little bit of a slack of, like, obviously for whatever reason, Silent Hill was not something that obviously they wanted to put a lot of money into. Like, they obviously didn't think it was going to make a huge amount of money, even though the game was very successful. But that doesn't always translate into film. So I thought, okay, like, I can kind of somewhat let go of the shoddy backgrounds at times, things like that. It's not the first horror film to have that, because actually there are some set designs and there are some character visual designs and stuff like that actually I was like, yeah, there are some cool designs here, and if you're a general movie and you're more going because you want to generally see it, you want to see something, then there's actually some cool creature-based things that if you're not really known of the game, you're going to think, oh, this visually looks actually quite cool. You know what I mean? So there was part of me that wanted to be like, I think some people would be interested in this, to go see this because of that aspect of it, If you don't really know the games, then there's a lot of this that's going to seem pretty, like, new style and stuff like that, and there's a lot of this that's actually going to be like, that's actually kind of cool. That looks kind of cool. But the problem with it was, by the time it got to the end of it, in my lucid-based brain, was the fact, and also going off of other people that were leaving the cinema, was that most people, when we walked out, and it wasn't like a full screening act in any sense of the word, it was like a bunch of people at the back of a room. But most of the people were leaving going, what the fuck happened? Like, what happened here? What was going on? Like, because it generally just doesn't make a lot of sense by the end. There is like this is what is happening, but it just feels a little bit like, okay, it feels like there was a way more here, right? There was more to this, but this feels like a kind of wop of like but at the same time it also doesn't link everything together to make it seem like it makes any sense. And that's more of the problem. I could get down with a film that's basically just all about the style over substance, because it, Silent Hill has a pretty awesome style. What I mean? So I could deal with that. A lot of the original film was kind of, what was cool about it is really the style. The style of it, the visuals of it, the kind of horror of it is what made, I think, is what actually made it a pretty good film. But this one has some of that style, but sadly there's not enough of a connective, cohesive film here. And it starts to feel like we're just basically a YouTube channel that's remaking scenes from Silent Hill with an actor, and then not really being like, I'm just want to remake some scenes. You know what I mean? I'm not really making the film. I'm just going to make a bunch of scenes and I'm going to post them on YouTube. Like, it's a little bit of that kind of style in my head, where it's like, it's like fan made at times in my head.
And at one point I was thinking, well, they've gone kind of so far off, like, the actual point of Silent Hill 2, that I don't think they're going to do the ending. And then they did a similar ending, but it felt so undeserved that I was kind of like, why? Like, none of this is just like, the whole point of Silent Hill doesn't make any sense. Because of the whole plot of this film, And
is this the very end, the bit when
the very end, but also,
okay, it's kind of say the reset, the whatever it is, the after, whatever.
No, like the end, like it doesn't make any sense. Like, this whole film, it relies this whole.
All I can say in my lucid state is what the part that happens at the very, very end of this, when all I can say is a kind of, like a revisiting of the earlier part of the film, which is again in my lucid based brain going, holy fuck, did I sleep through it? And I'm like, am I in the next screening? Like, or did I like somehow get so like out of my brain that I've gone back in time? I'm starting the film again.
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
Yeah, maybe it felt a bit.
What's
like
going on?
But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a fan, and it's a shame because I love the game. So
well, you were
I was excited.
You were really excited. I think
I was, but I knew it wasn't.
I saw you.
Great.
You posted something on
did.
Instagram, and that has become a rarity now. So it's actually. I was like, he's a bit excited about this. He wants a bit. He's in a Silent Hill zone right now, and he's like, I want to see what hopefully is a kind of okay-ish Silent Hill film.
It's Salem's Lot again, you know. I get really excited for
it's all the ideas and none of the context. It's literally zapped out all of the meaning behind all of the meaning, and you've just got some like, it looks kind of nice.
Yeah.
That's what, that is kind of what Salem's Lot was to us, like that.
Condom,
yeah, it's like,
I can't have fun with that.
It's like, you've got some actors that are doing a perfectly fine job.
Yeah.
You know, you've got some actually quite nice cinematography. You've even got some good music. But it's hollow.
Yeah.
There's literally you've not understood what this was about.
Did you read it?
And that, Did you read that book? Did you play that game?
Yes.
You know, it is. Yeah, it is very much like that. I mean, I'd even say that even Salem's Lot was better. At least it still had a story that kind of made sense from beginning to end, even if it felt like it was cut to shit.
Yeah, but it's not good, man.
No,
you know, but
it's not really. Yeah, it's not really what I recommend, and I don't like recommending being like, don't go see this film in the cinema. But it is a hard one to be like. It feels like it will waste people's time, if I'm honest. Yeah, it is one of those ones where I don't expect it to do very well at all. It's not going to based on the reviews, but you know, what I will say is, if you're not thinking about it and you think, I was going to go and see that, and you haven't gone for another film because you didn't like the first one, go see Bone Temple. Because that one's not doing as well as, to be honest, it should be doing better than it is.
Yeah, go see Bone Temple.
Go see Bone Temple, or just go bone something.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Just go beat off. That's probably more fun.
Yeah.
Go beat off with sandpaper.
There's probably a porn parody of Silent Hill 2 out there. Go do that.
It's probably about as authentic. You know? Well, come and let us know your thoughts on Return to Silent Hill if you're unlucky enough to go and see it. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTEH Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review as always. We'll see you Monday for our spoiler-free review. Play us out, fellas.